We are running into March Madness, by the way. I read an
Yes, we
article.
are.
Yeah, I read an article that says productivity is down 80% in some places,
Oh,
and some,
wow.
yeah, yes, and some people are just busy watching
I'm sure.
basketball
I'm sure. Well,
Okay,
anytime you want to get started, I'm happy
all right.
to.
So let's get started, and some
Okay.
other people may come in a little late. Um, Please allow me to introduce Katie Magolio. Did I just say that wrong?
Yeah,
Majolio.
it's Maljolio, but no worries. You
Majolio,
almost got it.
who is the community liaison and community engagement coordinator for Yukon TAP, which is the Brownfields project funded by EPA in Region 1. This Brownfield project has been doing very well in terms of serving New England communities since the beginning. And Katie has been there from the very beginning as well. So we have the honor to have her conduct a presentation for us today to educate us about Brownfields redevelopment and Brownfields disproportionate environmental impacts across New England communities. I will turn this over to Katie. Thank you, Katie. Please feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. I think you covered it, Carolyn. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to TikTok for having us today. Like Carolyn said, my name is Katie Maljolio. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator and Community Liaison for Yukon TAB. My background is in social work, and today we're just going to be talking about the connection between brownfields and the disproportionate environmental impacts experienced by disadvantaged communities. So taking a look at today's agenda, we'll start with an introduction of topics and key terms. We'll go through a historical timeline of environmental policy and events as they relate to brownfields. We'll look at some of the data on communities that do have a large percentage of brownfield sites. We'll discuss some really important core principles for equitable reuse when it comes to brownfields redevelopment and creating healthy communities. And finally, we'll highlight some success stories from New England that embody those principles. We'll also have time for Q&A, and I know some folks are going to be monitoring the chat, so feel free to save your questions for the end or put them in the chat as we go. We'll definitely get to them. So when we talk about disproportionate environmental impacts, we do so with the goal of minimizing them and creating healthy environments for all people. And we can achieve this goal by practicing the just treatment and the meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of social factors, especially in regards to decision-making processes that affect human health and the environment. We can also minimize these disproportionate environmental impacts by working to protect all people and all human beings from environmental health hazards and ensuring that all people have access to a healthy, sustainable, resilient environment in which to live, play, learn, work, grow, and worship. And so bringing this conversation back to brownfields and why this is so important in the context of brownfields, historically underserved and underrepresented groups have been intentionally left out of decision-making processes that affect their health and their environment. And there are certain groups that are disproportionately impacted by environmental health hazards like proximity to brownfields. And some of these sensitive populations include people of color, low-income populations, older adults, people with disabilities, or limited English-speaking households. So while brownfields and brownfield redevelopment can be a really powerful tool for positive change within communities, and this process can really increase quality of life for residents, if not done with care and with good intentions and with proper planning, the process can possibly worsen pre-existing social issues and become really divisive. And the core difference between these two scenarios is community engagement. We'll talk about the importance of community engagement throughout the presentation. as well as prioritizing principles of environmental equity and fairness throughout the entire Brownfields redevelopment process. So to provide even more context, we're going to kind of go through a timeline on the next few slides that shows us how the EPA Brownfields program and what was once referred to as the environmental justice movement have evolved together throughout history. And some of the historical events in the next slides refer to environmental justice, or EJ, in the titles. And we did just feel that it was important to discuss them and paint a picture of how brownfields and environmental laws, policies, and events have developed over time. So starting off in 1982, a very famous protest in Warren County, North Carolina, against a hazardous waste landfill in a predominantly Black community. This was one of the first well-known examples of people bringing attention to race and vulnerable populations in the context of a healthy, safe, clean environment. And this momentum continued in 1987 with a report published by the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice entitled Toxic Waste and Race. And this report revealed that race was the most significant factor in the location of hazardous waste sites. In 1993, we have a first record of a regional planning commission in Ohio receiving funding for brownfields. And then in 1994, we have the signing of Executive Order 12898 by President Bill Clinton, which specifically directed federal agencies to address environmental justice in minority and low-income populations. That's the language that was included on the executive order. And a year later, EPA expands its brownfields program with 22 new grants. So this is a really great example of how brownfields redevelopment is a crucial part of this movement for environmental health and environmental safety for all people. Between 1995 and 1997, there were some even more important historical events. So namely the first Environmental Justice Caucus and the first National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And again, just a year later, more brownfields funding becomes available, showing again this important relationship between environmental law and policy and safety and the brownfields redevelopment movement. And then in 1998, EPA awards the first Brownfields Job Training Grant. This is a grant really focused on building capacity in underserved communities and promoting sustainability. In 2002, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, better known as CERCLA, is amended to include the Brownfields Law. And this law required more attention and action towards environmental and social issues. And it also stated that nonprofit organizations were now eligible to receive brownfields cleanup and job training grants. Moving to 2007, EPA awarded the first round of brownfields training, research, and technical assistant grants, encouraging support for communities with the greatest need, including those with disproportionate environmental challenges. And then in 2009, EPA released a memorandum emphasizing the agency's commitment to environmental justice. That's not on the timeline, just kind of something I wanted to bring attention to. And then back to the timeline in 2015, EPA awarded a training, research, and technical assistance grant to Groundwork USA to focus specifically on helping communities practice equitable development and implement different approaches in brownfields work. These milestones reflect the ongoing efforts to achieve healthy communities and a clean environment for all people, and as well as the important role that brownfields development plays within this goal, within this mission. So where are we now? And how can we advocate for environmental health and public health for all people amidst all the changes that we're experiencing? So firstly, we can have conversations around the importance of affordable housing and affordable and push for projects like this on redeveloped brownfield sites. We can also implement anti-displacement strategies within our work as Brownfields practitioners. We can make sure that communities are meaningfully engaged throughout the entire Brownfields redevelopment process. And we can intentionally build capacity and share resources with communities that are vulnerable or disadvantaged. This is most definitely an uncertain time, but these are some ways that we can stay grounded in our work and remember why the work that we do is so important. So next, we'll take a look at some data on some of the common trends and patterns within the communities most impacted by brownfields. So this visual is showing us some connections between brownfield sites on acres and population data from the American Community Survey. It's a bit dated, but these trends have certainly not gone anywhere. So today, numbers more than likely look very similar or possibly even more severe in terms of disparity. And what this data found is that people living within a close proximity to brownfields are disproportionately minority or people of color, disproportionately low income, linguistically isolated, and less likely to have a high school degree when compared to the US population as a whole. And then this is a little demographic analysis of communities with EPA-funded brownfields properties. So this not only shows the disparities that exist within towns and cities that have brownfields properties, but it also shows that what the EPA has been doing for the past few years in terms of grant requirements and showcasing need and prioritizing underserved communities. These are strategies that, sorry, I'm getting over a little cold. These are strategies that have been working well in terms of getting the funding and resources to the places, the neighborhoods, the people that need it the most. And you'll see on the slide that communities with brownfields and with that brownfields funding have a higher poverty rate than the national average, have more people of color than the national average, have a higher percentage of vacant residential units, and have less income per capita, again, as compared to the US. So what can we take away from this data? To put it simply, brownfields are disproportionately impacting and harming these underserved communities and vulnerable populations. So within this data, there's also geographic patterns that we can pay attention to, brownfields concentrating in certain areas and certain towns and cities, often ones that are, again, underserved, under-resourced, disadvantaged. We're looking at urban areas with high population density, regions that are more likely to be marginalized and struggling economically. And finally, this data can serve as a reminder that we need to prioritize public health and a safe environment for all people within brownfields work. So how do we do that? We're going to kind of quickly go over some guiding principles for equitable brownfields redevelopment and success stories that embody and represent those ideas. Here are some of the principles that we can lead with and that we can keep in mind as we pursue different brownfields projects. We've discussed a few of these already, but just to emphasize and bring these points home, we want to ensure access to affordable housing whenever possible. We want to promote community resilience against all threats and environmental hazards. We want to prioritize amenities that increase quality of life for all residents. So, we're thinking about grocery stores, health clinics, affordable housing, green space. We want to work with local small businesses, especially those owned and operated by the sensitive populations discussed earlier in the presentation. And in the same vein, just making sure that any jobs created as a result of brownfields redevelopment projects have, of course, living wages, good benefits, and that people who live in these communities are the ones being hired for these jobs. So keeping everything very community-centered and community-focused. We can also do that by partnering with community-based organizations who know the community members well and can connect with them. And then again, always striving for reuse options that create safe, healthy, walkable places to live. Implementing these practices or principles into Brownfields redevelopment work will ensure that all projects are promoting healthy, strong, safe communities and improved quality of life for all residents. This is always our goal. And now we want to highlight a few different success stories that embody these principles from different states across Region 1. So starting with Howard Street Apartments in New London, Connecticut. This 5-acre site was once an industrial area with contaminated soil and groundwater, but has since been remediated into an affordable housing complex with 197 units. Affordable housing is essential in this context because it offers a stable, healthy living environment for families who have historically been exposed to environmental hazards. So by converting a polluted site into accessible housing, the project not only addressed environmental concerns, but also provided residents with long-term stability and opportunities for economic growth. This kind of transformation is a powerful example of how environmental justice and affordable housing go hand in hand, or how affordable housing and this movement for healthy communities and equitable, fair, clean environmental policy go hand in hand in improving the lives of underserved communities. So moving on to the Thornton Heights Common Project in South Portland, Maine. This is a notable example of creating these healthy communities and healthy environments in action. The site was previously a church, but it eventually became very underutilized, and it was home to several different contaminants. This property was transformed into a mixed-use development, so providing affordable housing and community space for another underserved neighborhood. What I want to emphasize here is the community engagement aspect. Community engagement, environmental safety, public health, brownfields redevelopment, they're all extremely interconnected and work together in a lot of ways. And in this particular case, several public meetings were held to gain community feedback. Residents expressed a strong need for affordable housing rather than saving the church. So that, very simply, is the direction that this project went in. And this is how the process should always go. You know, community members being those key players, having a say in different reuse options. It's very possible that the community engagement process was so successful here because of the role of a community partner, a nonprofit organization called South Portland Housing and Development Corporation. Community partners and community engagement are essential and so important for advancing positive environmental outcomes in underserved areas and ensuring that brownfields projects are inclusive and accessible. So shifting gears a tiny bit, we wanted to showcase the Ferris site in Lawrence, Massachusetts. We've talked about 2 different success stories that highlight affordable housing, but there are other kinds of projects that are super beneficial, super important for disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods. The Ferris site was a former foundry and industrial site that has since been transformed into mixed-use development, including affordable housing, but also a public park and accessible green space. Walkable green spaces are especially important in these underserved areas and disadvantaged neighborhoods, as they provide residents with access to nature, fresh air, social togetherness, recreational opportunities, all of which contribute to improving mental and physical health. So this project is really a fantastic example of grassroots community-based organizations, stakeholders, and community members coming together to achieve a shared goal, make their vision a reality. Groundwork Lawrence and Lawrence Community Works were instrumental in throughout the redevelopment process for the Ferris Foundry Park. So this redevelopment not only removed dangerous pollutants, but also addressed the needs of a historically disadvantaged low-income community. And the project highlights how brownfields remediation can enhance quality of life and can foster community engagement and can ensure that disadvantaged communities have access to safe, affordable housing and green spaces. So just a little plug for anybody here. UConn Tab summer map applications are open. More information can be found on our website. You can reach out to me, reach out to Randy, reach out to Carolyn, and she can connect you. And we're also going to open it up for a Q&A if anyone has questions. But we have a lot of different projects that we can support you with. In terms of brownfields assessment, cleanup, redevelopment, our services are free, and the application usually takes less than 5 minutes. Again, say thank you so much to TikTok for having us today, for giving us a platform to talk about this important topic.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. We will have more webinars coming in April. There are 2 of them. The first one is on storm preparedness and mitigation and recovery and funding opportunities. And everything is on our website. You can see the rest of them as well. We will also be offering workshops, and I think that we'll invite TAP to come back to give a workshop for us as well, if they will agree to do that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Stay in touch. And we are, especially TAP, is here to help with this very challenging issue of brownfields in Connecticut. Actually, brownfields are a serious issue across the entire country, including tribal nation lands as well. So please stay in touch, stay connected. UConn TAP will do everything that in their power to help communities in New England, but there are TAPs around the country as well. And TikTok is also here to serve New England communities. Thank you very much. We hope to see you again soon at our next webinar, which is on April 15th. Thank you so much.